Are you feeling lost in a digital wilderness? Welcome to Lost in Cyberia. We are your guide to navigating the world of cyberspace.
So whether you're a tech enthusiast or you're looking to land your first job in InfoSec, we're here to break things down into bite-sized pieces so that you don't have to. Welcome back to another episode of Lost in Cyberia. We're your hosts, Annie Mei
And Anika. And today we have Alaina with us. It's such a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
So Alaina Lawson is a Perth-based cybersecurity consultant with a diverse background in cloud engineering, technical writing, and governance, risk and compliance, or GRC. She also plays an active role in academia, assisting in teaching and grading assessments at the Australian National University within the College of Engineering, Computing and Cybernetics. Wow, that's so impressive. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, Alaina. And you are here in Canberra all the way from Perth today.
Yeah. So I work remotely in Perth and then my team's all in Canberra, so here I am.
Wow.
But you grew up in Perth. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
You grew up in Canberra, didn't you?
No, I grew up in Perth, so I was in Canberra for about 7 years. Did a lot of work and study here, and then funnily enough, when I moved to Perth, I then got my current job, which was still Canberra based, but so work from there. I'm probably back every 3 or 4 months at the moment. So.
Yeah, cool. And I should also add that we also met at the Australian Women in Security Awards last year in Sydney. We potentially could have been work colleagues because both our companies got bought out by Fujitsu. Yeah, we wanted to talk to you today about your path into cybersecurity, especially given that cyber is a very male-dominated industry. There's not many women who end up in this field, but I know that you come from a STEM background. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about your education and how you ended up in cybersecurity?
Yeah, sure. I was thinking about this earlier, and I was like, whenever someone asks me about my career history, it's always on all the recent sort of milestones, and I'm like, it actually started in high school. And I feel like I never talk about that. So I took my first IT class in year 10, and then I think growing up, my dad's a network engineer, and then my mum was a stay-at-home mum. She was an Oracle developer, and then when I was 3, she stayed home mum for 10 years, so through to that. But yeah, I think growing up, people would be like, what do your parents do? And I'm like, oh, well, my mum, she stays at home, and then my dad, I don't know. I never explain it. And then I think a part of, not all of it, but a part of me taking IT and being interested in it definitely came from having no idea what my dad did and just being a bit curious about it. So yeah, I did IT in year 10, and then in year 11 and 12, I started off doing one IT course and then ended up doing 2 IT courses, and I just pushed that through for the rest of year 11 and year 12. I remember telling my friends, I'm doing double math and double IT. This is, the first time you start picking courses, that kind of means something. And they were like, what do you mean? I'm like, why are you asking me that? And I feel like they actually didn't believe me at first. And I feel like that was the first kind of moment, even so early on, the first moment people they underestimated me because I maybe didn't fit the norms of what someone doing double math and double IT did. And it sounds so insignificant because it's year 11, but I don't know, just something that I've always remembered. I was like, why are you surprised? These are my friends as well. It's not even strangers.
And had you done quite well in those subjects as well?
Yeah, so
it shouldn't have come as a surprise.
Well, I guess it's we didn't have classes together, we're just friends at lunch and recess, but we ended year 12 and they do an award for each class, and I ended up winning the award for IT, and I just remember that being the biggest, it was so cool. I was like, oh my god, I beat all these boys, what is this? So yeah, and I remember being in those IT classes in year 11 and 12, and at first I was terrified, where's everyone else, there's me and 10 other boys sitting in this room compared to these every other class I had. And then I think at some point, I don't know what it was, but at some point being scared of being the only girl turned into game on, I can do this. It's kind of motivating in a way. So yeah, I know I'm literally talking about high school, but that's kind of where it all started. And then yeah, after that I went straight into studying at ANU, pushed through my 3-year Bachelor of IT degree.
And how did you through the degree as well, because you mentioned that you were the only woman, I guess at that age you're still a girl.
Yeah, I feel like at that age it was the first time I'd ever done something where it was like, I noticed the significance of all these boys around me and feeling a little bit like lonely.
Did you feel that they were supportive of you being
they were so awkward. They didn't know what to do. The most supportive person at that time was probably like obviously my parents, and then the IT teacher in year 12, who he wasn't at the school in year 11, but he came in year 12 and he was very supportive and like really loved what he was doing. And he actually nominated me for, I didn't know it at the time, for a WIC Woman in ICT in the group. He nominated me for the Student Encouragement Award, and then I got that. So that was like really cool that I don't know, that he believed in me, and like he's the one took the time to nominate me. So that was cool.
It's quite amazing to have male allies in this industry, especially in education. And you say, this is just high school, but this is where it all started. And we hear that this is where a lot of this starts, and this is perhaps why women who really want to be in IT, they really enjoy maths, they enjoy maybe some other areas of STEM, physics or quantum or something like that, they will potentially drop off because they're not getting this encouragement.
Yeah, and it's intimidating. Like, it's quite easy to be intimidated and be like, oh, not for me. So yeah, I see what you're saying.
But you felt it was for you straight away?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think at some point it turned into like a challenge or motivational thing. And I guess having the family background in it, like I was interested in it, it was cool. Obviously had support from the technical like learning side of it, that helped a lot.
And how did you find the support when you were in university as well? Was it the same as what you'd had in high school, or was it different?
It definitely grew better. I think I had my fair share of shitty managers and work environments, but it definitely grew better. Like, I think I found my sort of group of people at uni and we helped each other. I actually got my first job in cyber before I even started studying. It's actually, okay, this is...
Before you started studying at university?
Yeah, it was literally like 2
Okay.
weeks after year 12.
Wow, how did that happen?
It's a bit weird. Like, I look back at it and I'm like, this is like a moment, if it didn't happen, like I could be in such a different place right now. So I was working at a bakery during high school, and I just saw it as my little, bakery job. Wasn't anything special, didn't really mean anything. And then one day my boss was like, the guy that comes in and gets bread every morning. I was like, yeah. She goes, oh, he gets it for his wife, who owns a pie shop next door, but he actually works in IT. And she mentioned that because she knew that I was studying it. So one morning, little me, like, scared to talk to this old professional guy, I was like, oh, my boss said you work in IT, I'm gonna study it next year. And then he gave me his business card, and like we talked a little bit, and he invited me on a SOC tour that another company was taking him on. And then that company hosting the SOC tour,
like a security operations center?
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, just in case any of our listeners don't know what that, they're thinking about a piece of clothing.
Yeah. So like, this is a wild story. Cybersecurity is
looked at a secure operating center that this company was building out. I ended up doing work experience with them through meeting them. And then after the work experience, they were like, do you want to come back in a few weeks when you finish year 12? And I was like, yes. So I started that like literally 2 weeks after I finished high school, and I worked that part-time during uni, and then I think halfway during uni I changed to another company. And yeah, so that was cool. Like, I feel like I had a little bit inside scoop into what I was studying for, whereas I feel like so many people study and then hit the workforce and they're like, oh. Yeah.
Were you able to provide maybe some advice and guidance to your fellow students being already in the industry and working, and then...
It's hard though, because I feel like being on their level, like people might not really would have taken my advice. Because I encourage people, I was like, people will hire you while you're studying, like we don't have to wait. But yeah, I still didn't feel like I had enough of a voice to pitch it as much.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so you'd already had quite a lot of work experience before you'd even graduated from uni.
Yeah, and I think that the whole this random moment of me building up the courage to ask this guy about his work is what put me on the cyber trajectory, because before that I was just studying a Bachelor of IT because that was as general as there was. I thought that's keep my options open, but cybersecurity probably wasn't really on my radar until then. Even doing double IT at school, like it wasn't a course, I was doing game development, electronics. So yeah, this is what I mean by like such a little moment has kind of changed my whole career. And I'm like, what would have happened if I didn't say something? Would I be, maybe I'd be a game developer right now.
Yeah, and I think that's really, we talk about that a lot, about how important your network is, because most of the jobs that I've gotten have been through my network. Speaking of WIC, because the job I got at Ubi, I got because I met, or who ended up being my manager at a WIC event. And when I was looking to leave the job before that, I just contacted him on LinkedIn. And just said, hey, are you guys hiring? And we had a coffee, and that's how I ended up working there. So yeah, and like you said, it's just, and I think also that at that age, you would have been what, 17, 18?
Yeah.
So that's a very, I remember what I was like at that age. I was very shy.
Yeah,
I was being terrified to ask some random customer who, even though you're at work and stuff, and obviously there's someone who comes in regularly, but it's still quite an intimidating thing to get up the courage to actually speak to them about what they do at their work. So I think that's actually and like you said, what would have happened if you hadn't have done that, and you would have ended up maybe in a different career path or something. Yeah.
But maybe the fact that you don't have as much experience and understanding of the area gives you more courage in that way.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I don't really know what curious. You're curious, yeah. I don't really know what it is. It could be anything, so I can ask as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Because I think especially after you go through uni, if you haven't had any work experience, which I didn't have an experience of with studying cyber, but I studied law, and because I have never really worked in there, and I remember having done work experience in a court, and I remember stepping my foot in there. I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I want to be in a family court. Everyone's crying. What is going on?
Yeah,
this is
not
really
a great environment.
No, what am I going to do in a year's time when I finish this? I'm not going to enjoy this.
Yeah, I do appreciate my gradual introduction to it all, because I can see how scary it is, to just be thrown into something full-time straight out of studying.
You've done quite a lot of roles within cybersecurity, from what I've looking at your LinkedIn profile. There's a lot of different roles you've done, currently GRC, you've done pen testing, you've done cloud security, you've done, what else have you done? Technical writing, yeah. Did you end up in those different roles because you wanted to try different things, or did you just kind of end up in those roles because, say, your company was small and they needed someone to fill that role?
I started in a defensive security role, then did a bit of SOC work, and then, like you said, they're a small company, so it's a bit easier to, and I wasn't working full time either, so it's a bit easier to just put me around where I mentioned I had interest. So then that's when I did a little bit of pen testing. And then after that I moved to another company and did the cloud engineering and security stuff. So that was cool, and I felt like by the time I'd finished with them, I was pretty confident in where my technical abilities were at, both from working and from uni. During that cloud role, I was like, why does everyone hate writing? It's so important. Everyone's complaining about these reports, and part of me gets it, but another part of me is it's important, and I think that's doing all that writing work on the side of the engineering and security work made me realise, well, everyone else hates this. I feel like I'm kind of good at it. It is important. So then that's what kind of made me look for the technical writing role, which bridges the writing and the technical aspects of the industry.
I'm wondering with the technical writing, because if you studied, I guess, majored in IT in high school, so I'm maybe not using the right term. And then obviously did IT as well in university. Where did you get the skills to be also a good writer? How do you...
Yeah, that's true, how I sell myself for the job, sort of. Well, I think with technical writing, you're very much a bridge between the technical side of IT and then the non-technical end readers. And I don't think you could take a writer and get them to translate this, because you really have to understand it to be able to spit it out in a clear, comprehensible way for different types of readers. So like one, it was a self-recognition of I'm good at this, and then two, I had the technical part to back me up, and like you do a lot of report writing in I think a lot of IT roles, just general like risk assessment reporting or policy, like it's in everything, it's kind of inevitable, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I don't have a writing qualification, but I feel like, I don't know, the interest and the enjoyment out of it kind of got me half the way into like being good at it. Like I think it's hard to be good at something if you're not into it. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
And for anyone who might be listening who doesn't know what a technical writer actually does, but yeah, obviously you've mentioned you bridge the gap between the technical people and I guess non-technical people. But on a daily basis, what are you actually writing about?
I think of every IT role, it's so broad. Like the title like doesn't really capture what you're doing very well. So it can be anything from writing like internal policies to technical articles to like, I think the biggest one with the bridging it is the advisory pieces. Like how do I tell small businesses and individuals how to be secure about their day-to-day life and make them understand it without, bombing them with stuff they don't understand. So yeah, it's literally anything. It's a big variety of writing work. It's also like just risk assessment, general corporate reporting. Yeah, it's a lot of different things.
Do you think the fact that you were able to move so much between different roles allowed you that ability to comprehend different areas and translate it for yourself and then being able to share it?
Yeah, I see how that helped. And then I remember last time we got coffee, we talked about how we both liked reading. And
yes.
I think that just generally being a reader kind
of 100%,
helps a lot with that type of work.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't read, well, I shouldn't say don't read at all, but don't read much, or at least don't read novels. Yeah, they might just read stuff at work. I feel like but they don't really have a big vocabulary.
No, yeah, and the more that I read, I'm noticing the more of a critique, because I like write book reviews. The more I read, the more of a critique.
Like you get paid to do that?
No.
Okay. Okay. I thought someone was saying
that would be cool.
Oh, is it like you just review books on Goodreads?
Yeah, I just mean like I actually put effort and like write a review on the books I read.
Okay, sorry, I think I'm a professional book reviewer.
Maybe one day. That the point of that is, I noticed in like my personal, because I actually put a lot of like effort into it, I noticed how much of a critique I'm becoming on them, and then I feel like that translates a lot to the writing, risk and compliance work I'm doing, is just training that eye for detail in things and like questioning things and actually thinking about it, so just reading it and like next page.
Yeah, I think that's very true, because I think also because I come from a journalism background as well,
right.
So I'm very critical of other people's work, writing especially. But I think it's also, and you probably get this as well, where you read something that someone's written who is a very technical person, for a better word, and you read it and you're going, and you read the same sentence 3 times, and you're going, I don't know what this means. All I've done is shove a bunch of words in a row, and in their head it must have made sense, but when you read it as a sentence, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's just that inability to say things that all they've done is they've like just translated directly from their brain onto the paper, and that doesn't work.
Yeah.
You need to put it in a way that's logical and that's going to make sense to someone who doesn't know anything about this topic, is able to pick up that piece of paper and still understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And it depends so much on the like end reader. Like, like I said, back to just individuals and small businesses who like security and IT is not their focus. Like, you kind of got to tell it to them as a story. Whereas if you're pitching something to big execs, like it's a different language.
Yeah, definitely.
I have this a lot because I'm studying in my final year in cybersecurity and criminology, but also working in cybersecurity. So can very much relate to the whole working while you're studying and how helpful it is. But because criminology is obviously a lot of writing, a lot of reading, a lot of different types of writing. So how to write a policy review versus how to write a report versus how to write an essay, and recently they're making us do campaigns and things like that, and we've been doing things
It's also different.
very different, yes, very different audiences and things like that. And I feel that for me, well, I have always been reading, but for me, because English isn't my first language, I always have such a big complex about not being understood. And it's like, every time I talk to someone or I write something, it's like, does that make sense to you? And I had this really good compliment at work recently when they're like, oh, your report is so good, like it's so easy to read. And I was like, you have no idea how hard I have worked on this. Yeah, but it's amazing that you have this, I guess, innate ability that comes just from reading and from, to actually...
I think it's just one of those things where it's for some people and it's not I think it's quite normal to come across someone in IT and cybersecurity who are very technical and just don't like that reporting aspect of the job, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And if you don't care about it, then it's probably not going to be quality work, and that's where everything kind of just keeps spiraling downhill.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time, often people are forced to write things that they haven't been taught how to do it properly. So, for example, being in the cybersecurity area, especially in GRC, you've probably seen it too, where you'll speak to someone who's a network engineer or someone who's worked on the system, and they've been told to write this security documentation, but they don't know what security stuff they're supposed to be talking about because they're not cyber people. They don't know what the assessor would be looking for when that person is then going to review their documentation. So they've just been gone, hey, because no one wants to do this and you have to do it, good luck.
And they come back with questions.
Or they just don't do it properly because no one showed them how to do it. And I think, it just comes back to the lack of giving that time as well to showing someone how to do something properly. Because I think there is people often, I know a lot of people in cybersecurity haven't all gone to university, and I don't have an issue with people not going to uni. I think obviously everyone should follow their own path, but I think there is a lot to be said for the skills that you learn at university when it comes to writing. Learning how to write an essay, learning how to write, in my case, learning how to write a newspaper article, learning how to read something on a radio bulletin, how to speak on television. Those are all different forms of writing and speaking. And I think, when you're not taught those skills, it's very hard to just throw something at someone because, I think it just goes to show that people think it doesn't matter. The documentation doesn't matter. And I think, if it doesn't matter, why would we do it?
Working on governance, risk and compliance, a lot of it is documentation.
My first company I worked for, they described it as, you've got green team, so governance, risk and compliance, blue team, defensive security and SOC stuff, and then red team is pen testing. So I started in the blue team and everyone was like, don't do GRC, don't do green team, it's so boring. So I feel like the first year and a half I had in my head, don't do GRC, it's so boring. And then I'm here, I'm like, I'm really enjoying this. What are you talking about?
That's interesting. What is it about GRC that you like? Because I think a lot of people, have that mentality of GRC is stay away. Don't end up there.
I don't know. I think it just comes down to I feel confident with it compared to other stuff. I love IT and technical things, but there's also a point where it's so overwhelming being on the tools day in, day out. I do enjoy it, but there was just, I feel the learning curve, I couldn't see the top of it. It was so much to learn. Whereas with GRC, I just feel confident with it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I am also in GRC, so I think, I feel like my skill set aligns quite well to it, which is but there's obviously some aspects to it that can be a bit dry, I think, and I understand why certain people don't see the appeal of it, but at the end of the day, it's required everywhere. Unfortunately, people go, but then people go, oh, GRC is all about compliance, And then I go, okay, but then you're a pen tester. The only reason that company's paying you to do a pen test is because of compliance. Like, you know, it's exactly the same. Like, so I'm like, they're not doing it because they want to know their environment's secure. They're doing it because they need to check a box.
Yeah.
So it's like, I feel like people have that idea that that's all GRC is ticking a box.
Yeah, that's the worst, because then I've like heard of things when people will do something to tick an IRAP and they don't care. I'm like, are you serious? Like, that's not the point.
Yeah, it's like I feel like every second company now has ISO 27001 compliance, right? And then it feels like it's just it looks nice on the website. That's the only reason they have it.
Yeah, painful topic. Painful topic. Sorry, but yeah, it's incredible as well, because IRAP is such a hard assessment to get through. So you might as well care about it, and you might as well.
It costs so much.
I mean, why would you just, you know, yeah.
I think the thing though, like when like a system's getting IRAP, it's not normally the system owner who's been like, we need this to be done. It's someone higher up, you know, again. And to them, it's just a box ticking exercise to make someone else happy. I think that's where it's so hard with big organisations. It's like very little people like sometimes actually care, and then it makes it hard.
Yeah, for sure. And also for any of our listeners who might not be aware of what IRAP is, do you want to just talk about? I can't even remember I never remember what IRAP stands for. Information Regular
Assessors Program. You know what? Let's have a quick double check what IRAP stands for.
It's a Google ad break.
Just do a quick Google.
Oh yeah, you there. InfoSec Registered Assessors Program.
Okay, I was halfway there.
It's basically like a assessment against the Australian government's information security manual. So it's a compliance audit against it, and then most organisations have a year or 2 year, and you kind of recertify your systems. So
I would imagine depending on the criticality of the system.
Yeah. Like you said, it's a big audit. I think there's 900 odd controls that get looked at.
Yeah, I think it's over 1,000.
It's over 1,000 now.
Yeah, the newest update.
You will have some that are out of scope as well.
Yeah, but you still need to
sure.
assess that they're out of scope.
What's that?
You still need to like assess that it's out of scope.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, you need to say why it's out of scope. Yeah, exactly. So you can't just be. But I'll never forget. There was one time when I was doing. It was a different team to mine, and someone had asked me like, "Hey, do you mind reviewing the documentation for they're about to submit it, you know?" And I said, "Oh yeah, no worries, I'll have a quick look at it," because I was like, I was still doing my own work, so I said, "Oh, I'll have a quick glance over just to see that it's on track," kind of thing, you know, and they've filled in all the required things. Anyway, I opened the SSP Annex, which is the System Security Plan. It's always like when you're trying to remember the acronym, you're like, what is it again? Because you use it so often.
Doubting yourself. Do I remember that right?
Yeah. So, which is the document you were talking about before with the 1,000 controls, and I open it, and the column that says, you know, is it implemented, not applicable, etc., that was filled in, but then the column next to it where you write how it's implemented was not filled in. And so I had to go to the person and I said, "Hey, someone told me that these were finished, and then I just want to double check because I thought, oh, maybe you give me the wrong version, maybe this is an old version." I was like, "Oh, can you open it on your computer? I'll show you." So he opens it and he goes, "Oh, like, yeah, no, this is the finished version." I was like, I had to be like the one to break it to me. I'm like, you have to fill in this whole
This
column.
goes back to what you were saying about like, you can't just get someone to go and write something or fill something out, you know, there's a way around it, right?
And I felt really bad for him because he was a network engineer, he wasn't a cybersecurity person, and it's like, what is the point of having cybersecurity documentation if you're not getting a cybersecurity person to write it? Because how is a network engineer supposed to know how to write, to fill in a system security plan? Because like, they know how the system's built, but the security person then goes to them and asks them questions about it, right? So they go, let's talk about vulnerability management. How often are we scanning the environment? Let's talk about, do we have application control in place? You know, and then they go to the people who actually built the environment to actually ask them questions, because obviously the security person isn't going to know those answers unless they've already got But yeah, and I was like, look, I'm really sorry, but you're gonna have to fill in this whole
and that's
column.
a lot of effort.
Yeah, that's the one that takes the longest amount of, like, the most amount of time. Yeah. And then, because I was like, look, if you filled in the SSP well, it's a good chance you can probably just copy and paste a lot of that information as long as it's aligned with the control. But I said, you're gonna have to fill this whole thing in. And yeah, he was so shocked because he didn't know. And I was like, if you submit this now, it's gonna get sent back to you like a week later, and then you'll get put to the bottom of the pile. So you'll be waiting another 2 years for someone to be looking at it.
But also the thing that people forget about compliance, and like, it's a tick box exercise. This is your permission to work. This is your permission to get contracts. This is your permission to actually sell your product.
Yeah.
And I think this is where, yes, GRC may be considered boring because it, whatever. And sometimes people forget about this, that actually, like, it's extremely important for your business. But another thing is, it may be boring, but it's extremely difficult, because to do that, you need to be someone like Alaina, right? Because you need to be knowing what you're doing. You need to actually understand why you're asking those questions, and what are the answers that you're expecting, and what do those answers mean.
Yeah, a lot of the time you get answers as well, and you kind of have to be like, that's not actually the answer. And you gotta like kind of dig into it a bit more. So yeah, it's a lot more than just answer question answer.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, but that also comes with having the right skills to know what questions to ask, right? Because if you're someone who doesn't know how to ask the right questions, and then they go, oh, okay, takes notes, oh, I have all the answers, then they go to put it into the, big spreadsheet or whatever, and they go, oh, I actually didn't find out what the answer to this was, or, oh, they answered a different question to what I actually asked, and I didn't actually get the real answer, so, and then I have to go back again, until I finally get all the answers.
The biggest thing I find is with like the security, the ISM security controls are all slightly different, but then some of them have the same like buzzwords, and then people will copy and paste the same response, and then I have to go back and like, it's not the same question. Like with the vulnerability scanning, one is like, are you using it? And then the next one is like, are you running it weekly? And the next one's, are you running it fortnightly? But then like all those 3 boxes have the same, yes, vulnerability scanner, yes, vulnerability scanner.
Yeah, I can to a degree though, I can understand why people do copy and paste, because I think it's a very long document. But I do agree, like, if it says like, oh, do you scan once a fortnight? You can't say, yes, we scan once a month. It's like, that actually isn't a yes then.
Yes, we scan.
That's what it normally is.
Yeah, sometimes it's so vague, like it's the most vague answer. Like you're like, yes, we have vulnerability scanning. Like, doesn't even say like what they use. You're like, using Tenable? Like, what are you using?
Yeah. I had one recently with a CAC version 4, which I think is cloud assessment, something, information quality or questionnaire. Essentially, probably not. I will put it in the show notes, but it's done by the CSA, so the Cloud Security Association thing. And it's around your responsibilities between, like, if you're a cloud service provider, if you have a SaaS, like, what is your responsibilities? And you have it's a security questionnaire, it's a GRC questionnaire. But they had a question around whether your logs are read-only, which is very important for non-repudiation. So, like, obviously, if you can change your logs to rewrite them, then what's the point of having logging and monitoring?
Yeah, you can't trust it.
Yes, and then one of the questions is like, is it possible to change the status of the logs from read-only to like not read-only? And there's like, and he answered, there's like, no, logging can't be turned off. It's like,
copy and paste job.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is so far away from what it is.
I mean, it's the buzzword logging in the
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, we have logging. No, it's like, no. Yeah, and then I have provided like an explanation, like a proper, like, and maybe it's on me that explaining it. Maybe I could have explained better as well. But it's like, I just don't understand what you mean. Like, yeah, possibly it can be, but it doesn't. I'm like, well, yeah, so you see the problem here? Yeah, and if they don't see the problem, then you go, if you're assessing them and you're assessing them for their security posture, if they don't understand that, then that's very poor in my view.
Yeah. Makes it so much harder when they don't have visibility of their own stuff.
Yeah, which I feel like happens a lot.
Yeah, I think just because IT is so big now, and then everything's running on technology that it's gotten to a point where the boundaries are so grey, and especially with stuff like cloud, like some of it's so easy to just like click and off you go.
Yeah.
You just kind of click and forget.
Yeah, and then once you're off, you store and stuff. And I feel like even I have to be really mindful sometimes. Like, say if I shared a document with someone like a year ago, right, and then I'm usually pretty good. Like, I'll check who's got access to my G Drive files. Obviously, no one else has access to the whole thing, but like, you have to give people access to one folder or to one document. And even that access level control is so hard to manage, even on your like personal account, let alone for a big organization. To say like, who has access to this one, this Google sheet? Is it Sheets? I can't remember. And you're like, you might have thousands of documents in your drive, right? And you don't know, and I found documents that people have given me access to years later, and I still have access to it. And I'm like, damn, I could just like drop some malware in this thing.
Yeah, but this is so important because this is where GRC comes in and says we want you to annually at least review those. We want you to annually review the access that you have given to people. Yeah, all these people that are in your organization and they have now changed roles, they still have access to this critical systems.
Well, like, I love automatic triggers. Like, they're so good. 45 days of inactivity, like, your account's locked. You know?
That's the best. Yeah, if you can make it automatic, and absolutely. And this is like for me where GRC becomes more interesting because, we are talking about a system that we can implement to make this more automatic. But even to implement something like that, you need to understand it. You need to understand why it's important, and you need to have a big picture view, which I don't think you get if you are just, IT is so big, right? Just in IT. No, but if you're just a specialist in that one technical area, you don't really see that. And so, we get, like, Jesse gets a bad rap, but to be honest, they're the real, like...
But yeah, there's a reason we have to do it.
If it wasn't important, like, it would have been gone long ago.
What do you think are the biggest challenges moving forward, though, looking at the future?
What, in security or GRC? Or...
Yeah, GRC.
I think that everything's going to keep getting bigger, and that's going to make it so much harder to get a grip on.
What do you mean by bigger?
Like, technologies, this is going to be more, right? Like, it's going to be so much more data, and I just think, like, the more advanced we get with things, like, the harder it's going to be to, like, get a grip on, say, like, organizing an organization's data and infrastructure. Like, it's back to, like, it's so easy to, like, click something and, you've deployed a VM or a website, and I think it's going to be so hard to organize to a point where, like, we can't even conceptualize how much, something has. I also think data storage is something I really want to do more research in, but there's obviously so much data, and we're exponentially getting more data, and plus with retention rules, like, there's so much, and then we also have a lot of rules and security controls around backing up data, but then at what point are we going over the top? Because if there's an example I heard from a network engineer, and it was, this config on this device is being backed up because all other devices are backed up, but then we've duplicated that config to 3 other devices, but then all that config is also backed up. But then because they're, like, in data centers, those data centers are backed up. And next thing, just, like, single devices config has been, like, exponentially backed up. And it's just, when you think about it like that, it's like, that's, like, such a waste. So I really, like, love, that's one of the things on my to-do list, is to do a bit more research into...
It costs a lot.
Yeah.
Especially with AI now.
Yeah, a lot
all
of
those
data.
searches.
But there's a point as well where, like, just personally, it's like, how much stuff am I, like, is my life saved on the cloud? Because there's just so many areas, like, beyond your personal cloud where stuff is stored.
Yeah, and all those random organisations that you've been part of, whether you work there or not, or someone's shared something with you that you've contributed to as well, because they might not get wiped for, if ever, depending on how well they, if they're actually good at getting rid of stuff too, because once you lose access to it, you don't have any control over that document, do you?
I've seen some reviews that we've done where they said that the data will be retained indefinitely until you ask us to delete it. And I just go, well, I don't know if it's legal actually, you know, but if you sign a contract with them and you say, yes, I agree to all of your rules around data retention and everything, and small businesses, how will a small business know this and understand this? And then they will be exposed to, if that organization gets breached way past the contract ended, they will be exposed to that risk as well of their data being.
That's what I mean. It's only so big that it's like, you know, it's already a bit messy. So if it gets bigger, it's going to get messier, and I think it's a little bit scary.
Yeah.
It's a big job.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is. Okay, cool. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. So thank you so much, Alaina, for coming on the podcast today. And
thanks for having me.
especially while you're, you know, on your Canberra trip.
Yeah, making the rounds.
Yeah. And thank you to everyone for tuning in again to this episode of Lost in Cyberia.
And we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.